Garden centers want you paying $80 for trees that took them 50 cents to graft. But the Persians figured out 2,000 years ago that you can steal the genetics of any fruit tree and force it onto wild roots for almost nothing. I just turned a worthless crabapple into a premium Honeycrisp factory for $27. This is the orchard industry's worst nightmare, a backyard grafter who refuses to buy their marked-up clones. Watch me perform plant surgery that turns garbage roots into gold. The necessity of this plant surgery comes down to a biological hurdle called heterozygosity. If you plant a seed from a sweet premium apple, the resulting tree will produce wildly unpredictable, often bitter fruit. Because sexual reproduction scrambles the DNA, you cannot rely on seeds to reproduce specific traits. The only way to guarantee the exact flavor, size, and crispness of a premium apple is physical cloning. The ancient Persians mapped this biological loophole over 2 millennia ago. They transported living branches across vast trade routes, ensuring exact replication across their empire. This was an early form of agricultural piracy. By moving living tissue instead of seeds, empires bypassed natural genetic lotteries, locking in guaranteed food production. Elite fruit has never relied on natural reproduction. It depends entirely on the deliberate, mechanical transfer of living tissue. This animated diagram shows a cross-section of a tree branch. Between the outer bark and the inner wood sits an extremely thin, bright green ring called the vascular cambium. If we zoom in, we see that the cambium is made of meristematic tissue. These are essentially plant stem cells, undifferentiated tissue capable of active, continuous division to build new layers of wood and bark. Grafting relies directly on this tissue. You take the meristematic layer from a premium fruit tree and physically press it against the exposed meristematic layer of a wild tree. When these two exposed rings remain in tight contact, they heal as a single unit. You trick two distinct organisms into sharing one vascular system. Mastering the precise alignment of these microscopic cell layers severs your dependence on commercial nurseries. To build a tree, you first need to secure a host. This requires foraging for a viable wild apple rootstock growing in an uncultivated environment, like a forest edge or an abandoned lot. Commercial rootstocks are bred for heavily managed, uniform nursery rows. A wild foraged root system has already survived real-world competition, poor soil, and harsh weather without human intervention. The rootstock determines the final size of the mature tree through a trait called vigor. Commercial growers often select dwarfing rootstocks, like M9, to keep trees small, while standard rootstocks, like Antonovka, produce massive 30-foot giants. Wild saplings naturally possess high vigor. Their expansive root networks provide exceptional environmental adaptability and natural disease resistance. The ideal target is a sapling 1 to 3 years old with a pencil-thick trunk. If the trunk flexes without snapping and reveals a bright green cambium when scratched, it is a viable host. When excavating the wild tree, you must preserve the fibrous feeder roots. These fine, hair-like structures prove the plant has a robust vascular network capable of absorbing the systemic shock of the upcoming surgery. You are securing a highly resilient biological engine, explicitly adapted to power the premium genetics you will attach to the top. To fuse the premium branch, the scion, to the wild roots, we use the whip and tongue technique. This is the standard mechanical protocol for joining two branches of equal pencil-thick diameter. First, you execute a long, smooth, diagonal slice across both the scion and the rootstock to expose the interior. A standard horizontal cut leaves only a tiny circle of exposed tissue. Slicing at a sharp diagonal stretches that circle into an elongated oval, exponentially increasing the cambium surface area available for fusion. Next, you slice a shallow notch, the tongue, straight down into the face of both diagonal cuts. These corresponding notches slide into one another, interlocking the two branches like puzzle pieces. This locks the joint in place, providing the mechanical stability needed to withstand wind shear during the healing phase. The absolute rule of this geometry is alignment. The green cambium rings of both pieces of wood must physically touch along at least one entire edge. If they do not touch, the surgery will completely fail. You finish by binding the union tightly with grafting tape. Traditional grafting wax can trap excess moisture and invite rot, while modern tape is breathable but still prevents the exposed tissue from drying out. This specific geometry forces two independent biological systems into a single, inescapable healing environment. The biological response to this surgical cut begins within days. Both severed cambium layers generate parenchyma cells, forming undifferentiated callus tissue that rapidly bubbles up to fill the empty space between the branches. This initial callus tissue acts as a biological sealant. It halts sap loss and establishes the first physical bridge between the two organisms. The healing timeline is predictable. By day 21, the joint generally achieves mechanical stability, allowing the plant to hold itself together without the aid of the tape. Internally, the disorganized callus mass begins to structure itself. The cells differentiate and align into functional vertical vascular tubes of xylem and phloem. Around the 60-day mark, the union undergoes complete lignification. The tissue hardens into true wood, achieving permanent, seamless vascular integration. You are using the tree's automatic wound response to turn a few basic knife cuts into highly valuable agricultural infrastructure. You can push this biology further by building a single wild root system that supports multiple, completely distinct fruit varieties. For thicker wild rootstocks, you use a cleft graft. You split the top of the trunk straight down the center and insert two wedge-shaped scions directly into the fissure. Stacking different varieties onto one trunk compresses diverse genetic libraries into a tiny physical footprint. It extends your harvest window as branches ripen at different times and establishes a built-in cross-pollination network to guarantee heavy yields. However, hosting diverse genetics on one root system introduces a physiological conflict known as scion dominance. This diagram illustrates a trunk feeding multiple branches. The wild roots supply a uniform flow of water and nutrients, but highly aggressive scion varieties will naturally monopolize that upward sap flow, starving out the slower-growing branches. To manage this, you must selectively prune the most aggressive branches. Cutting back the dominant growth artificially throttles its sap intake, forcing the tree to redirect resources evenly across the rest of the canopy. By managing this internal sap pressure, you elevate your role from a basic surgeon to an ecological engineer, actively balancing competing life forms on a single stump. Long-term maintenance begins after the first growing season. Once the joint is fully lignified, you must remove the grafting tape to ensure the rapidly expanding union does not become mechanically choked by its own bindings. You must also monitor the base of the trunk for rootstock suckers. These are wild shoots emerging from below the graft line, and they must be aggressively cut away before they siphon vital energy from your premium canopy. A few years later, the math compounds. You can harvest dormant branches from your newly grafted tree to use as scions, attaching them to dozens of new wild rootstocks. By cutting dormant scion wood in the winter and storing it wrapped in damp paper in a refrigerator, you preserve the tissue for months. This allows you to ship living genetics long distances and graft them across different seasonal windows. This cycle of harvesting, storing, and fusing ultimately yields a decentralized, localized genetics library that operates entirely independent of commercial supply chains. The nursery cartels want you dependent on their $80 trees, but the Persians proved 2,000 years ago that fruit genetics belong to whoever has the skill to clone them. Unearth the History is here to bring you the techniques they forgot to patent. Start your orchard rebellion today. Liberate your backyard, steal the genetics, and subscribe.